Hello all you wonderful people and welcome back to another video of redrawing my boring childhood characters using randomly rolled aesthetics from your suggestions. We have 3 beautiful characters today, 2 teenagers and 1 celestial, and I'm really happy with how they all came out, so let's get right into it. So it is time to spin that wheel. I know you other Drawfee fans also get bummed out when I fast forward the wheels and you can't say that whole thing before the spin is over, so I left this one in just for you. But either way, I rolled the second unnamed character from my group of random teenagers and the aesthetic pastel goth. Looking at her original design, she's actually a perfect candidate for the pastel goth aesthetic without getting too many changes to her overall design. She's got sort of wavy black hair and a pastel purple crop top over a pink cami. And if that doesn't tell you what year I designed this character, surely the hair bump and the jean capris help date this drawing, as well as date me. I feel old just looking at this. But what is pastel goth? As a refresher course for those who were on Tumblr around 2010, or as a little explanation for those who have never heard of this aesthetic, pastel goth is pretty much what it sounds like. It is the combination of goth elements with pastel colors to create a strong juxtaposition between creepy and cute. Popular features of this style included flower crowns, pastel dyed hair, platform shoes, crosses, and bows with creepy styled charms. In my opinion, it also carries strong influences in its general shape and clothing pieces from the iconic soft grunge Tumblr era. There are a lot of skater skirts and chokers which lean a lot more grunge than goth, which is probably why the traditional goth community originally wasn't a huge fan of the style. My 13-year-old self, on the other hand, was a huge fan of the pastel goth style. I had a big mint green era and would do everything in my power to get my hands on cute knit crew neck sweaters. However, on account of being a 13-year-old and also in a more sheltered community, I ended up collecting more cute than creepy, so I never really could get it to balance out. Also, I was very convinced at the time that the only people who could wear so much pastel and still look good were super skinny white girls, and I inherited a short and stocky European body that is ready to store up nutrients just in case we encounter a food shortage in the winter, but also a warm Malaysian undertone to my skin that's equipped to handle lengthy exposure to the sun. So I was very convinced that pastels would never be in my wheelhouse, which is not at all correct, and that's on the 2010s lack of representation in media and photography. So as a bit of inner child healing, I gave my girl bigger calves and a yellow undertone because those were the things I was insecure about as a kid. And I would love to say that I'm perfectly comfortable in all of those features now, but healing takes time and I am working on it, but we're doing our best and appreciating the journey. I also gave her a cat phone case because I ended up getting one exactly like that later in life, and also some collar pins because I used to collect enamel pins and put them on my collars and jackets and backpacks, and honestly I still do. And for the drawing, it just felt correct. But that brings us to the end of our first drawing for this unnamed character. I think she's very cute. I feel whole, maybe fulfilled, maybe just nostalgic after drawing her. It's kind of hard to explain. That said, I still haven't come up with a name for her. I was trying to before I released the video, but I think I'm just gonna hand this one off to you guys. So if you have any name ideas, I would love to see it in the comments. But let us not linger here too long and let's get right into our next drawing. So once again, for the next design, we're spinning the wheel of childhood characters and the wheel of aesthetics, where we've gotten JJ, one of the teens, and the aesthetic, oh, Lolita. First of all, you know I have to take a moment and complain about the fact that I randomly rolled a man. I knew it was going to be a man eventually, but I still refused to go into it quietly. And speaking of other things that I refuse to go into quietly, the term Lolita, it gets such a bad rap. It is a beautiful style inspired by Victorian and Rococo periods with so many subgenres. Originally, it was a style popularized in Japan because young women wanted to dress in a way that was intentionally disregarding the opinions of others, specifically in opposition to the male gaze. Unfortunately, we live in a society and this is why we can't have nice things. But before I get too heated here, let's go back to this character design and also where I accidentally made a mistake, because I technically didn't draw JJ in the Lolita style at all. What I actually drew is something known as boy style. It's a style that is heavily associated with Lolita style and is considered to be its more masculine counterpart, but is in fact not a subgenre of Lolita. And just to be clear, it wasn't a deviation that I took because I have a problem with people wearing what they want to wear. Neither boy style nor Lolita are considered gender-specific styles. I just didn't do my research and then ran out of time. Yeah. But I guess we live and we learn, so let's take a moment to learn about this less commonly known style. Boy style takes inspiration from the Victorian era. Occasionally it takes things from the Rococo period, but not as often as Lolita. Boy style can be separated into many subgenres, but has two main sub-styles: Oji and dandy. Oji specifically embraces youthfulness, regality, and extravagant accessories, while dandy is more of a modern gentleman aesthetic, having less of an emphasis on overdressing and featuring more subtle jewelry. My redrawing of JJ I think leans more heavily into Oji, but I don't feel like I quite push the accessories hard enough. Although, to be fair, I don't feel like I do that very well in any of my designs. A lot of Oji cords come with a hat or a headpiece of some sort, and even in JJ's original design, he had a hat and headphones, which I didn't carry over in any way into this design. And honestly, I need every opportunity to say I carried a design element over, because some of these redraws are really barely hanging on to be considered redraws. The only thing about JJ that I really carried over are his eyebrow shape and hair color, which in the original drawing looks like I colored brown over blonde. Everything else is pretty distinctly different, especially with the addition of a mobility aid. Like I said in the Pastel Goth redraw, representation wasn't particularly big in my life at the time, and I think it reflected quite heavily in my art. And so now I try to remember to put something in from time to time, whether it's a body type or a specific facial feature or a health condition or anything really. When looking up inspiration, I saw a lot of boy style outfits that had cool canes to go with them, and I thought, hey, what if that's a practical application that JJ sort of just embraces and incorporates into its style. And I like to do this just to have a subtle way to prove that the things you can't change about yourself or your appearance don't detract from your style or aesthetic in any way. But that's our second character completed of today's collection. JJ, what a beautiful boy. I cannot even begin to imagine the money that he must save to get cords, especially as a teenager. If he made a D&D character, there are only two ways this would go. He would either make a tiefling or an ASMR. Don't you think so? Also, now the name JJ seems a little bit plain for him. I do have a note from my childhood self saying his full name is Jefferson, but I'm not really convinced that that matches either. It is what it is. The wheel takes no consideration for anyone. And speaking of the wheel, it is time to spin that wheel for the last character of the video, getting really close to being done with almost all of the characters from the collection of teenagers and celestials. We did not roll a teenager this time. We rolled the celestial Vesta with the aesthetic solar punk, and since celestials get a bonus trait, we got glow in the dark. Taking a look at her original design, we have a very cute red and black dress that is giving Monster High, long black wavy hair with a deep side part, and tan skin. I must have been in my manga art era because the proportions on this drawing are a little bit insane. Just a little bit, because Miss Ma'am, how are you standing? To be fair, this new drawing isn't particularly realistic in proportions either, but before I get into the design process, let's talk about what solar punk is. Solar punk is less of a fashion style and more of an artistic movement. It's focused on sustainability and connecting nature with the community. It has a super optimistic and hopeful view of the future, full of renewable energy and gardens and plants everywhere. You get to see a lot of earthy, natural colors, a lot of very clear blues. It's one of my favorite aesthetics. Solar punk gets its name from, unsurprisingly, solar energy as a renewable resource, and well, no matter what subgenre punk comes from, it's typically a movement that focuses on doing things for yourself, defying societal norms, and emphasizing individual freedom. A lot of people are more punk than they think. Now that we know the what of things, let's talk about who. Who is Vesta? So Vesta was named for a celestial body in the asteroid belt, in fact one of the largest objects in the asteroid belt at all. She comes second only to Ceres or Ceres, depending on which language you start in, which is considered to be a dwarf planet. planet. Vesta is also the brightest asteroid and is faintly visible to the naked eye. In her time as an asteroid, Vesta has experienced many collisions, and a lot of her fragments have actually fallen to the Earth, which helps to give scientists an idea of what the asteroid is composed of. The name Vesta comes from the Roman goddess of the hearth, and she is called Vesta nearly internationally, with two exceptions. In Greece, she is called Hestia, for the Greek goddess of the hearth, and in China, she is called Zhao Shenxing, which roughly translates to the hearth goddess star. So to align with solar punk, Vesta's new design features more sun-tanned skin, a flat wide-brimmed hat, and a veil to shield her from the bright sun. There's lots of salvaged, draped earth tone cloth, and last but not least, glass chambers that have plants growing inside of them. In fact, her body itself is a glass aquarium with ocean plants. Admittedly, this is not really the most night-coded of my designs, but it's really cool, and I really like the look of this. There are just a lot of unique and magical elements to her design that are giving Mother Nature, and I'm really very partial to the radioactive yellow of the scars. Not only do they sort of fulfill the glowy prompt, but something about them implies that things have been repaired. Solar punk is not just about being sustainable, but being sustainable enough that the ending of the story changes, that things become lively and beautiful again. And I feel like Vesta does a really good job of reflecting that in her character design. But that brings us so quickly to the end of our final design for today's video, Vesta. I adore this design. I wish I had spent a little bit longer on it. I will admit I procrastinated on this one and I almost left it out of the video because I was running out of time, but she was just too compelling. And I know she doesn't look inherently glow in the dark because I made her to have lighting consistent with the other celestials so she wouldn't be out of place when I made the lineup, but I couldn't just leave it like that. So ta-da! We have a blacklight version of Vesta as well, which I think is so fun and I'm so in love with. I think it looks super cool and I'm very pleased with how it came out. But that is our trio for today. What an interesting group of characters. Very different from each other and all very beautiful in their own ways. Also, fun fact, Vesta is the only character from my entire collection of celestials and teenagers to feature pointy ears. I guess I keep forgetting that these characters are fantasy fictional characters and none of them actually have to be humans, and I just thought it would be a fun little addition. But of course, we have to show how they look in the group. So first up, we are adding Miss Pastel Goth as well as JJ to the group. Look, I know, JJ looks like he's from a webtoon novel compared to the rest of these characters, but he paid a lot of money for this coordinated outfit. He's not just gonna leave it in the closet to hide. I think we have 2 teenagers left to redraw, 1 girl, 1 guy. I am terrified to think of what those 2 will come to. But now for the big rainbow collection of celestials. Oh, I think Vesta makes a gorgeous, gorgeous addition. 100%. That's got to be a unique druid mage of some sort. I think when compared to the rest of the celestials, people might assume Vesta is a pacifist since she primarily focuses on restoration. But have you seen plants overtake buildings and trees uproot sidewalks? When the earth is angry, she is angry. Oh, but that makes us so close to the end of the collection, and we're also at the end of this video. So thank you so much for watching. Your support means the world to me, and I appreciate it so much. I think we have 4 characters left to redraw, so in a few more redraw videos, I'm going to have to pick a new category of childhood characters to redraw. Maybe I'll have a poll so you guys can vote on which section I head to next, but who knows? Not me.